We're answering your questions today about family structure.
Let's get into that. Hey everybody, I'm Nathan Warnock.
I'm Andrea Warnock.
And this is Family Friday. This is a show that we do every Friday where we take a look at what the Bible has to say about God's design for family, raising our kids, and give you guys some practical takeaways from what the Bible says about families.
Right. So this month we've been talking about family structure, kind of setting up a code and how to put that into practice. And then today, so we've been asking you guys to come up with questions and maybe even tips and thoughts about how you set up your family structure. And you've gotten us a bunch of questions and tips, and so we're going to just talk about those today.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys, for being engaged and
yeah,
giving
we
those
really,
over to us.
really appreciate that.
And there was some really good conversation. I'm not going to read all the sub-threads on each of these questions, but there was some really good conversation as people kind of gave some practical tips to other people who had posted up questions. So thanks, guys, for being willing to be engaged in that and help other couples out who have questions as well.
Yep. So if you have no idea what we're talking about as far as family structure and the code for your family, I would suggest going back to the beginning of the month and watching through our videos, and that will explain it better what we're talking about.
Right. And if you're not sure where to find that, you can find it right
here.
Ding! Right there. Hit that little eye. It'll take you over to the first video where we started talking about family structure. Yeah, that's if you're watching on YouTube. Hey, if you're listening to it on Apple Podcasts, real simple to go back and just scroll down to part 1 of family structure.
All right, so Nathan, will you get into some of the questions?
You bet. So the way we're going to do this today is I'm going to read some questions and then you launch off with some of your thoughts and answers. And if I think you missed anything, I'll jump in. So don't expect to hear from me much.
Right.
All right, so very first, we had a question about difficulty to have structure in a divided home, right? So a blended family, what do you do to have structure between two homes when mom and dad are split, especially when there can be very limited or no communication coming from the other spouse, the other family?
That can be really tough, and of course Nathan and I don't have experience with that. He came from a home where mom and dad were married, same with me, and we're still married. So we don't have experience with that, but we have experience talking to a lot of people who have had that circumstance.
Close friends.
Close friends, and we've also interacted with a lot of blended and blessed and their content. So I would say if that's you, look up Blended and Blessed. It's a really great ministry, and they offer a lot of help for blended families.
Yep.
And they have a conference once a year that's really great too.
Right. And it's through Family Life, and Family Life's a phenomenal organization generally.
We love them.
Yep.
So practically, I would say for this, one of the things to do is to just be consistent in talking about and reminding about the family structure and the way you do things. So it is probably difficult for children to constantly be switching back and forth between structures, or switching back and forth between no structure and structure, whatever that is. And it's kind of hard to enter back into your home where you have a code set up and you have ways that you do things and all that, and get back into that flow, quickly each time. That's probably really difficult. So just having a lot of grace is important with those kids that come from blended families. Lots of grace. That doesn't mean that you throw out the expectations, that they follow your rules and all that, but just having a lot of grace, talking about it consistently, reminding them consistently, having a family meeting where you're just kind of going over it. Deuteronomy 6 talks about the commandments, and it talks about binding them to your forehead and writing them over your doorposts, and just remembering them, having scripture. Ways to remember the scripture all the time. And it's kind of The same way with things that are important, we should be finding ways to remind ourselves all the time of those important things. So that's something that I would suggest. What do you think?
I would add on top of that, really reminding your kids of the underlying code that those rules represent. If you go back and listen to our Family Fridays, if you've been following along with us from this month, a lot of what we were talking about starts with your family's code.
Which
right?
is
What are those?
a lot of that is found in Scripture.
Right.
Yep.
What are those things that your family's going to be all about? And I think it can really help. Sometimes we can get so caught up because we're raising kids, and the reality of the matter is a lot of structure is rules and discipline. That sometimes we can get so caught up in the following of the rules and the discipline that we don't do a good enough job of enforcing here are the things we stand for as a family.
Right.
And continually reinforcing those things with your kids, even if you feel like, hey, they walk out the door to go to this other home across town and they are more than happy to be out from under our code, right? Fine. They're kids, right? There's a reason we don't let kids make adult decisions. If you keep reinforcing these things, by the time they are mature enough to make those decisions, those conversations you've had, the scripture you've repetitively kind of put into their minds, that will come back. And I'm convinced that they will appreciate the things that you were trying to do with the structure in your home, probably even in some ways more than maybe our kids might appreciate the structure in our home, because they will have been able to see the difference.
Right. And for those families who have then, one of the other part to that question was, if there's an ex-spouse, the other home that those kids are going to that is not there's not good communication with them, that's okay. Of course, it's more ideal if you can get on a lot of the same page with the other home that they're spending their time in.
Sure.
That'd be awesome. And I think you should always work towards having good communication and as good of a relationship as you can with the other parent.
Without compromising the things the Lord's calling you to.
Yeah,
Totally.
yeah, definitely. But if that's not happening right now, if that's not possible, you do a lot of prayer, have a lot of prayer for that other parent, and just still have the expectations for your home.
And always bring it back to the code.
Right.
Bring it back to the code.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, let's talk about bedtimes for a moment. So what do we think about having consistent bedtimes as the kids get older, right? Obviously this is easy if you have a baby or a 2-year-old, right? But what about as the kids get older? And how do we deal with the trouble of our children's friends who have no bedtime at all? And we can really expand this to be friends that have just rules generally that are more lax than our rules, which, if you've heard us talk about our family structure, is basically every friend that Jackson has.
That's not true, but okay, so yeah, Jackson does have friends who maybe in the summer don't have bedtimes, say they're going to bed at 1 a.m., whatever, and don't have as much structure in their lives. And I think because Jackson's lived in our home for 10 years, he's kind of gotten used to that's not how we do it. And we don't get a lot of pushback from him on us doing things differently than other people. Very frequently. Right.
Now, he likes to go to sleep and wake up early.
Yeah,
so we will see.
He's usually pretty tired by the time he goes to bed.
We will see how that plays out with the next child.
Right.
Because she likes to be up late.
She's a night owl. So he's 10. He is more of a morning early bird, and he gets tired at night. So for him, there's not much pushback on the bedtime thing because I think he's tired enough. But he's also been, many years of understanding we just don't do things the way that other families do them.
Right.
So that helps. I think as he gets older, I think we were just talking about this recently too. As he gets older, I don't know that bedtimes are appropriate in high school. I think that's maybe seems strange to me to say to a high schooler, you have a bedtime, but I'll certainly put one in place if I not being mature about that, and you're sassy to me all the time, and you're not able to keep up with your studies because you're seemingly tired, all that sort of thing. But then that potentially encroaches upon your time with your spouse too. So it may be like, hey, you need to be in your room by 11, or we are going to be in our room by 10. No, it could look a whole lot of different ways, but I think the big takeaway may be saying, we just don't always do things the way that another family does them. And going back to the code, here's why.
Right. 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 Yeah, I mean, that's a big thing for me, is having something to go back to.
Yeah.
Where we can say, hey, we do this because of this reason.
But we let Jackson stay up sometimes till really late because we're playing a game with him or we're doing something with him. So it's not like 8 o'clock, that's the time you go to bed every single night. No fun after 8.
Right.
And if your kids are older too, and you feel like I need them to go to bed, quote, go to bed, so that I have enough time with my spouse, maybe they're just going to go and read for a while, a while.
Sure.
Whatever.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing too, is thinking about, for me, the bedtime, so the person that asked the question, the bedtime question for me really comes down a lot more to what are they wanting to do with that time than the time, right? I mean, Jackson goes to bed usually between 8 and 8:30, but it's not that I think if he's awake till 8:35, tomorrow's going to be a train wreck, right? It's more of a, hey, here's the expectation so that your mom and I have time together at his age now, right? When he gets older, I don't have a problem. Now, we're going to get to the curfew question in a minute, so we'll talk about that in a minute. But from a bedtime, he's here at home. When does he want to go to bed? And he's 16. Yeah, I don't know that matters so much to me. But what does matter to me is what you're doing with that time, right? If he thinks he's going to sit in his room on a laptop for all hours of the night, he's got another thing coming because that's not happening.
Right.
So, I mean, it's for me, it's more of, as the kids get older, that structure changes to be less about sleep, because right now at a young age I need to manage their sleep. As they get older, it becomes a little bit more of, okay, now you manage your sleep, but I'm still managing what you're doing when you're staying awake all hours of the night.
And our daughter, who's 5, is, like we said, a night owl. She still has to go to bed when the other kids go to bed, but she dinks around in her room for who knows how long.
Yep.
And that's fine. 8 o'clock is still her bedtime, so she's in her bed dinking around.
Right.
And she's used to that. That's what she's used to doing.
Right.
Because that's what she's always done.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, good question. The question about what other people do, I think we answered that. But I think, one thing that I would suggest with regards to this particular question is just set the expectation and don't budge.
Yep.
Because that's one thing we've done well with Jackson, is there was no debate about, hey, when do you think you ought to go to bed? Or us changing it here, there, and everywhere to where he thought, okay, well, maybe I can negotiate this. He asks, I'll bet he asks 5 nights out of a 7-night week, Dad, can I stay up late and hang out with you guys? And 4 out of those 5 nights, the answer is no, which allows me to reinforce, hey, your mom and I are hanging out, right? But be consistent, and over time, your kids are going to realize it's just not worth arguing about, because the answer is going to be the same, and all I'm doing is whining for 10 minutes and then going to bed anyway. So,
good question.
Yes, it was. All right. So I promised it. Here it is. Curfew, yes or no? We had someone post up and say they hated them growing up, and so they did not do it with their kids. And most of their friends had curfew, so they sort of got to have their cake and eat it too, where they were the cool parents whose kids didn't have a curfew, but all the people they hung out with had a curfew, so their kid essentially had a curfew.
Yeah.
Because there was nobody to hang
Yeah.
out with after
Right.
curfew time. So that's funny. That kind of made me chuckle. Babe, how do you feel about curfews?
I'm torn. I had a curfew when I was younger, and I really hated it too. But I think that's part of parenting well, is that your kids hate some of the things that you do because you're doing it for their good. I can totally understand why my parents did a curfew. I was not the most wonderful child. I made a lot of bad decisions when I was younger, but I did get really upset when I was hanging out with a group of kids who were good and we were doing good things, and I still had my 12 o'clock curfew. So but as an adult now, I understand my parents probably didn't know what the difference was between when I was doing good things or bad things.
Sure.
So they kept my curfew. But I think as our kids get older, I will probably be more lax with a child who is making good decisions or seems to be making good decisions.
Sure.
I like that. I think Becca commented that she had a curfew, but it was sort of fluid depending upon who she was hanging out with and maybe, how, if she was to be trusted and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I like that idea. I do also like what my parents did. I had a curfew, but I could have people at our house hanging out until they did not care when.
Right.
I don't know that they ever kicked people. If I had a group of friends over,
Yeah.
I don't know that they ever kicked them out. My parents were happy to have people at our house, and they highly encouraged it. And so that was an option for me. If we want to keep hanging out, hey, come on over. We'll feed you guys. You can have all the pop you want. Just be at our house. So
Right.
there was sort of an out for me.
Yeah, that's where I think I'm at, honestly, on this particular question. I really love the way your parents did that. And the older our kids have gotten, the more I think I like that, where you have a curfew. And I don't even necessarily know that it would be a super late curfew for me. But I think as parents, then for me, I go out of my way to make sure our house is a cool place to hang out. Right? I mean, we've got, stuff that the kids are into to have
Sure.
fun. That's a big deal. And taking a real interest in my son or my daughter and my sons or my daughter and their friends so that they want to come over. And, you may be listening to this and going, well, nobody's going to want to hang out over at your house every weekend. But I don't know if that's necessarily true. And here's my proof of that so far. We don't allow Jackson to spend the night at other people's house. So it's not like Jackson never spends the night with people. They just come spend the night over here. And yeah, there's probably part of that where they're like, well, that's weird. Why don't you just spend the night at my house? And Jackson goes, yeah, it's just my parents don't let me do that. And then what happens? They look at each other and then somebody goes, okay, well then let's go spend the night at your house. Right? I mean, I feel like if you build a place where people want to be because you intentionally try and create that environment, which your parents did a great job of, then yeah, at first it might be like, it's kind of weird that we always go over to Jackson's at midnight or whatever. But then pretty soon, you know what it is? We go over to Jackson's house at midnight. And they've got pop and stuff we like to do. And then for me, not only then do I get to manage what Jackson's doing, and I don't mean I sit down there and go, hey, guys, how about a Bible study? Right? I mean, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about I can manage it because it's in my home. Right? I know they're not sitting on a computer in somebody's room searching whatever comes to their mind at 1 o'clock in the morning. Sure. Right? I mean, I'm able to manage some of the activities, and I'm able to invest in Jackson's friends' lives, which I think is an important role that we play. So for me, I think I'm as of right now with a 10-year-old, mind you, I am down for him having not a curfew when he needs to call it a night, but a time when he needs to be back here at the house. And he can bring whomever he wants with him as long as it is not one girl that is coming back. Unless I sit in between them, which is fine too.
Got it.
Well, it'll be great. We're going to have a big talk and we're going to have a Bible study and it'll be fun. All right. Okay, I did have somebody on here asked a question about why their wife won't cook every night and serve him while he watches sports. So if that person's you, you should be ashamed of yourself.
Jake.
You need Jesus. And then he does say, all joking aside, how do you help a stay-at-home mom see, feel, believe that her job is so valuable and impactful?
Yeah, so if the structure you've set up for your home is that a parent stays home, first of all, if you are that parent that's staying home, I think consistently pressing into the Lord to get validation from Him in your role is so important, and to remember the calling. Sometimes in fact, I'll just be totally honest. The other day, I was threatening my kids that I should just go back to work, and they can go to daycare, because I'm so tired of being completely taken advantage of by them, and being sassed by them and yelled at by them, and it's been a hot mess some here lately, and it's made me double guess my calling to stay home, and it's made me wish that I didn't have that calling sometimes. And so I think it's so important, though, that we, as the parent who stays home, if that's the structure of your home, go back to the Lord and remember the calling, and remember how that went down, and the confirmation that I'm supposed to stay home and all that sort of thing, and then the circumstances don't matter, right? So getting that validation from the Lord and not from your spouse or your kids is so vitally important. So I think as the spouse, then maybe even just reminding, hey, this is what the Lord says about you.
Yeah.
This is what the Lord says about your value.
It's good.
And I value you. I just even giving compliments about how that spouse interacts with the kids, or what you love about what they're doing in the home, or whatever. Just being overly complimentary, because raising kids is a huge lack of compliments. Raising in the workforce, you get a lot of natural accomplishments. At home, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of accomplishments, because everything is just always in process.
It's slow. It's slow.
Right.
Changes.
And you get, of course, feedback too. Maybe not all the time, but in the workforce, usually you're getting some good feedback here and there if you're a good employee. And at home, you just don't. It's very rare.
Yeah.
So
it's good.
So doing those sorts of things, I think, are vital for that.
Great. So as a follow-up to that, maybe just a couple quick ways that spouses can help their stay-at-home mom, stay-at-home dad remember that they're not only a mom or a dad, but also a woman or a man, a friend, a spouse,
Yeah, just giving time for having those other roles. So as the spouse who doesn't stay home, being very proactive in allowing time for that spouse that does stay home to seek, to have friendships, to have time alone, to get out of the house sometimes. All that kind of thing is really good. And I think Becca said, one of our friends said, she and her husband switch off. So one thing she said is, on Saturdays during nap time, maybe her husband will go out and do his own thing, and then on Sundays during nap time, she'll go out and do her own thing. Or Nathan has in the past said, hey, Andrea, Saturday mornings, why don't you just call those yours, and you can just do whatever you feel like you want to do, and I'll take care of the kids. And so it could look anything like that.
That's great. Yeah, that's good. How will you manage your child's social media activity?
Well, Nathan could probably give a better idea on this, but one thing that we've told Jackson, because he's the only one who cares at this point, he's brought up the idea of a smartphone, you know. It apparently seems to be a thing. To
Smartphones? Because those are a thing.
No, yes, of course. To give our kids smartphones at really young ages, and I'm shocked, honestly, but yeah, you guys.
No, not impressed.
Oh.
Hard pass.
Oh, you guys, we have a family member who works for the FBI that works in looking into child porn. You guys, I cannot overstate the terrible idea that smartphones are in the hands of children.
Right. So on that note, starting this coming month, in fact, a week from today, we start a series with Jordan, who's my brother, and another gentleman that he works with
At the FBI.
At the FBI, specifically talking about technology and our children. So please, please, please make a point of listening with us for the next 4 weeks on Family Fridays as they share a little bit about what they do, what they see, how we can minimize that risk. But yeah, this whole my 7-year-old has an iPhone is insane.
Or 10 or 12 or whatever. So anyway, Jackson has friends who have much more access to technology than we allow him to have.
Right.
And so that has been something that he's talked to us about and complained about sometimes in the past. But again, we remind him we don't do things like other families do. We remind him why. And he has heard from us some of the dangers of that too. So he just kind of has to accept that that's where we're at. But we've told him we are never getting you a smartphone. We have no plans to ever buy you a smartphone. So that's where we're at with as far as like the smart technology.
And he knows. I mean, we've been telling him that for 2 or 3 years.
He knows it.
So at this point, he knows. If I want a
It's not
smartphone,
surprise.
I'm going to have to buy it once I'm out of their home.
Yeah, we're not allowing those in our home with our kids. As far as technology that goes, at this point with our children, they're allowed very little, and they just that's just been the way it is, and they know that. Even video games, we turn off the Wi-Fi. We turn off the chat function that comes with some video games.
They're just not internet connected when he plays them, unless I'm there with him.
Right. So anything that our kids have that is internet connected, we are right next to them.
Yeah.
Because that can go bad so quickly, and even not that it's necessarily intended. It's not that the child
by the child.
It's not that the child even intends that. It just can.
No, most of the time they don't.
Right.
And things. There are people that they spend all their day thinking up how do we get inappropriate stuff in front of kids. Yeah. I mean, that's just the reality.
And then once you see something, you can't ever unsee it. And for a child, it can have devastating consequences. For an adult too, but for a child, it can have very devastating consequences. So, So as far as technology, we just don't allow our kids to have much of it.
Right. And to answer your question directly, Scott, because you were specifically asking about social media.
Oh, yeah.
There is a doctor here in town, Dr. Beelan, who talks specifically into the dangers of social media and our youth and ties the rise of things like Facebook to adolescent depression and suicide. Because the problem with Facebook is it's not reality, right? It's like reading a romance novel and expecting your romantic relationship to be like that. The romance novels thrive on all the best parts of romantic relationships without any of the downfalls or the hard work. Facebook, you never see someone post up on Facebook, or very rarely do you see someone post up on Facebook that says, hey, just had a huge fight with my spouse. It was my fault. I went and apologized to her. Man, work hard on your marriage. People don't put that on Facebook, right? They put the best of everything up. And so young people who are forming beliefs about themselves and their life, they look at that and think everyone's life is better than mine. Everyone's prettier than I am. Everyone's got more money than I do. Everybody's got nicer stuff than I do. Everybody's a better athlete than I am, whatever. And has devastating effects on young people. So Nathan, as a dad, wants Jackson to have nothing to do with that. Nathan, as an understanding that Jackson is a human being, knows that's not probably realistic, but at this point, I don't have any intention of changing any of the time restrictions that I put on technology for him with regards to any of that. So if there comes a time in his life where he goes, yeah, rather than play a half hour, an hour, or whatever the time is at whatever age he's at of video games today, I'd rather spend an hour on Facebook, then fine. He can do that in a public space where we're nearby him, and great. But one, I'm willing to make a bet that at least with Jackson, is probably, I can't imagine a situation where he goes, oh, rather than play a video game, I'd rather...
I want to scroll through Insta.
Well, right. But if it happens, it happens. And he'll have freedom to do that in a controlled environment. But just unrestricted to looking at things on Facebook all hours of the day and night, that's not happening for him under our roof.
Right.
And that's one of those things I believe so strongly about, that if he hates me for it, I'm okay going into eternity telling the Lord, hey, I feel like I did the best I could to steward the son you gave me.
Yeah, that's good.
All right. Okay. Dealing with teenage kids who try to assert their dominance, and how about specifically, what would your advice be in a stepchild situation?
Teenage kids that try to assert their dominance. I don't know. It's just kind of who teenagers are, right?
Sure.
I don't know. That's not where we're at, so it's hard for me to put my head around that. When I was a teenager, I definitely was like that, and I think some of it was feeling like I was not understood. Not that teenagers can always be understood, but as parents, if you just try to, rather than assert your opinion and your dominance all the time, maybe just trying to understand is
good.
Helpful.
Particularly in a step situation, embracing that role of sort of a sounding board.
Yeah, tell me more about that. Why do you feel that way? All that sort of thing. I think at least might help them feel like they're being understood, or it matters what they say.
Right. And
for step kids, and for your own kids, find a way to connect.
Yeah.
That's super important for kids, but
totally.
Particularly step kids, when they're not your own, just try to connect with them a lot.
Yep.
In a way that's meaningful to them.
Yep.
And then that maybe will smooth over some of that needing to be mean and dominate sort of thing.
Yeah, so I would say, breaking this up into two pieces. With regards to children, as you're raising them from the time they're young, go out of your way to be a listener. Because if you set a foundation of, hey, I'm here to listen and talk openly with you, they will embrace that when they reach those adolescence years. If they believe that the times they were trying to tell you about their imaginary puppy that they were playing all afternoon with, and you're kind of like, yeah, just get this over with, and then you expect that they're going to take conversation with you seriously when they're 13, 14, 15, not going to happen. Do the best you can to build an environment of, hey, I'm here to listen.
Yeah.
And there's no judgment. You just tell me, we'll talk through it. Right? And when your kids are 5, there may have to be some, hey, you know what, I hear what you're saying, but this is the direction we're going. They can respect that if you truly listen to them. But understanding that, that environment of open communication and dialogue with your kids has to be started young. Mm-hmm. And you just have to recognize that teenagers are not known around the world for their wise decision making. So if they're treating you in a way that is hurtful or disrespectful, take that to the Lord, right? And use that as an opportunity to share grace with them, because teenagers do dumb stuff, and one of the dumbest of the stuff they do is hurt people that are close to them.
Yeah.
So I would say that with regards to stepchildren, I would say, because you oftentimes have not had an opportunity to build that moral authority that we talk about in their life, if that teenage child is being brought into your new marriage, understanding that their response is their responsibility, and allowing that to just go before the Lord and say, look, I am going to forgive you when you treat me that way, and just let the Lord deal with it from there.
Yep.
Bam. And just like that, you make a baby appear in the middle of your video.
For those listening, Lincoln's in the video now because this child does not sleep. So awake he is.
Perfect. And I'm not wearing a hat. Back half of this video is a train wreck, y'all. Don't listen to a single thing we say. Okay, just three other questions that we have here. How do you manage different parenting ideas from both parents? Right, where you might have an idea about something and I have an idea about something. This never happens in our marriage because we're always on the same page. But for this poor person that has this issue with their spouse, we'll answer the question.
Talking it out thoroughly and trying to understand where the other person is coming from is really good. So it gives you the opportunity to try to understand and think about maybe their idea is better than mine. But if you still can't come to a resolution, maybe you need to go to your mentor couple and talk about it if it's a big deal. If it's not a big deal, then just give up to the other person, right? Don't make a big deal out of something that's not. So, choose your hills that you die on.
Right.
But if it's a big deal, then maybe you need to go talk to your mentor couple, and discuss it with them.
Yeah, I mean, maybe try it, just specifically on here is mentioned screen time or bedtime. Look, if it's something where you go, man, I don't feel like this is a moral issue,
you can get some expert opinions on those, though.
Sure, well, right, but I'm saying perhaps maybe as a little experiment with you and your spouse, maybe try it your way for a month and then try it their way for a month and see which one works better within your family. And I think you can be upfront with your kids that, hey, we're gonna try this for a little bit of time, and then we're gonna try this for a little bit of time, and then your dad and I or your mom and I are gonna sit down and talk about which worked better for our family, and that's what we're gonna go with.
But I will be clear, screen time and bedtime, those have a lot of, don't reinvent the wheel, those have a lot of expert opinions out there of what's appropriate for certain ages. So, maybe the best thing is just go with that.
Sure. Yeah, that's right. Okay, Jessica asks, what do you do when both spouses or parents feel overwhelmed balancing work, life, kids, etc.? And particularly, in this situation where her and her husband work different shifts.
Yeah. So what do you do when you're overwhelmed? Cry to Nathan. Sometimes that's what it is. It's just needing to have a shoulder to cry on, and maybe there's some things that we can help each other with to not be so overwhelmed. There was a time a month ago or something that I was like, I'm so overwhelmed, the house is dirty and I can't seem to get it cleaned and there's just too much going on, blah blah blah. And he was like, okay, well, I don't know what you did. You just cleaned the whole house one weekend. The kids and I did a lot.
I just sprayed Febreze everywhere so it smelled clean.
The kids and I went out and did a lot of things that weekend so that he could stay here and clean, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, Jessica, I think it's difficult when you feel like there's just no time for recuperation. Mm-hmm. And one thing I would suggest in that particular case is really try hard if you can to have some people around you that can help ease that burden of carrying that. Right? I mean, maybe some friends you have where like you can go do some play dates where you can be fed into together and have, you can go over to their place and do dinner with them because he's working, and then you're kind of in an environment where you're getting some time with other adults, right? Where you're able to have adult conversation.
Or have people over.
And or have people over to your place to hang out. But try to find some people that can help carry that burden with you. And then really, really be intentional about carving out those times where you and he can connect. You and your husband. Because that can be really hard when you work different shifts. I'm sure you're both tired once you get off work, and it can be hard to find those good times of connection. So scheduling out, let's get away this time at this weekend, even if you're just going on a walk around your neighborhood for an hour or whatever, but to be able to connect the two of you is really important.
Sure.
Last one then, when traveling or on holidays, do you stick to the same routine, bedtime, eating habits? If so, how do you do that?
Yes and no.
Not helpful.
So go with that. Bye. See you later. So I think as far as that question goes, it's like whatever helps you keep your sanity.
Sure. And it allows you to enjoy your vacation.
Right. So if not being strict on bedtimes is fun for you on vacation with the kids, I assume is what we're talking about, is fun on vacation, because then you're able to stay up and do a lot of extra fun things, and no one's crabby because they sleep in the next morning. Great, then do that. But if having the kids up later means everyone's crabby the next day because no one's getting enough sleep, or you're not able to just kind of unwind and enjoy your own vacation after they go to bed or whatever, then don't. Then keep the same bedtime. It's your vacation, so make it something that you're going to enjoy. And you're probably talking about young kids with the bedtime thing.
Sure.
And as far as eating, we think it's fun to not be quite as strict.
We're not super strict diet.
No, we're not. No, we're not super strict diet people. But it's vacation, so we let up a little. But we're also not wanting to spend our vacation feeling yuck.
Right.
So, we're not just going all out and doing whatever as far as eating goes.
Yeah. So I think some practical advice, Sarah, for us is a lot of times what ends up happening on vacations is we're more lax on naps. Not for like him, but for like Riker, who's 3 now.
And him, you were talking about Lincoln, who's 6 months, for those who are listening.
Yes, thank you. But for Riker, we'll let him stay up from his nap, where he would usually take a nap, and Ryan too, where she might usually take a nap. We let them stay up, which is fun for them. They get a chance to do more fun stuff together with us as a family during the day.
And they can they're at an age now where they can handle that.
Right, but then come bedtime, we're a little bit more strict on keeping the normal bedtime, which I will fully admit to you is a lot for selfish reasons, right? Because we're on vacation too, and I don't want my 3-year-old and 5-year-old up until 11:30. And then we don't have any time to hang out, the two of us. So a lot of times for us, where we might get lax is on the nap time, and then
But then by bedtime, they're ready to go to bed.
They're ready to go to bed.
Even a little bit early.
Right. Yeah. And then we still have time to have some vacation, the two of us, and hang out with other couples if that's what we're doing or whatever. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of practical advice as far as bedtimes go. But I would totally agree with what you said, babe, where it's what works for you guys, right? I mean, when you're on vacation, just don't put yourself in a position where you throw out all the rules and then you get home from vacation and you look at each other and go, I really need a vacation, right? Because that sucks. Cool, guys. Hey, thank you so much again for sending us in your questions. Would really encourage you if you would hit the subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, and hit that little bell next to it so you know when we come out with new videos, because you never know when there's going to be a Lincoln sighting. in a video like there has been tonight.
So many times recently.
That's right. So totally hit that subscribe button, hit the bell. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, please give us a ranking and leave us a review. We would love that. It really helps get the word out about our podcast and our channel to those around. Guys, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate you being here. Remember, top 5 on Marriage Monday this coming week.
Yep.
Top 5 things that trip up people in their marriage. A little bit more of a serious one, but hopefully one that y'all can enjoy and take something away from. Otherwise, I'd love to talk to you guys soon. Feel free to keep those comments coming on things that, questions you guys have, things that you do to put structure into your family. Love you guys. Remember, God is for your family.
Hey, thanks for joining us on Marriage by Design. If you were impacted by this video, like it by hitting the thumbs up below. Also, don't forget to subscribe, and once you subscribe, hit the bell icon so you can be notified when new episodes release.
Excellent. Also, one of the huge pillars of our show is interactivity between us and you. So we would love you to comment down in the comments below if you have thoughts about this video, or if you have questions or other things you'd like to see considered in the future. In addition, if you'd like, you can email us. That's marriagebydesignpodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram @marriagebydesignpodcast, or you can find us on Facebook by searching Marriage by Design Podcast. Finally, if you want to, you can tweet at us. We do have a Twitter account that is @MarriageXDesign. Thanks, and have a great day.